This series is one of many programs developed by our office to assist in comprehensive campus internationalization and emphasize the benefits of social, cultural, and linguistic knowledge beyond what is represented in our home countries. This semester, the series is focusing on the wide variety of internationalization efforts taking place here at Illinois State University. This semester, all events are being presented as Zoom webinars. As an attendee, you can submit questions through the Q&A function, and we will relay those to the presenter at the end of their presentation. It's now my distinct pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Illinois State University's Director of International Admissions, Kayla Carroll. Kayla has a BA in History from Truman State and an MBA from Bradley University. She's held the role of Director of International Admissions at Illinois State since June 2018. Before that, she was Director of International Admissions at She was Director of International Admissions and Student Services at Bradley University, an immigration specialist at Illinois State University, and prior to that, an international student advisor at the University of Texas, Austin. At this point, I'll be handing it over to Kayla to share her overview of international admissions and recruitment. Thank you, Kayla.
Thanks, Linda. Hello to everyone. As Linda mentioned, my name is Kayla Carroll. I'm the Director of International Admissions here at Illinois State. So this morning, we're going to just be talking about the current state of international admissions, primarily as it relates to Illinois State University, but we will talk about some broader concepts and trends that we're seeing across the industry. A quick agenda. We'll be doing an overview of kind of defining some of our terms, the services that Illinois State International Admissions provides, some of the challenges and opportunities that we are facing, a quick kind of guess, I think that we're all realistic about it, as what is our post-COVID outlook, and then we'll be taking questions at the end, as Linda mentioned. So it's best to start by defining what is considered international, what are the different types of admissions that particularly ISU has, and where we are as far as staffing, and that will be relevant to later in our conversation. So first, who qualifies? We use this term international. What does that mean? Particularly for Illinois State, and this is defined differently at other institutions, but here we are looking at any applicant or current student who is not a US citizen or permanent resident. There are varying visa categories that are within that, but when we're talking about international, you can just imagine it's anyone who does not hold a US citizenship or permanent resident. Most of the visa holders that we will be referring to today are here as F1 students. That means that they are in a full-time student visa category. We also work with J1 students. Those are typically our exchange students or visiting scholars. We do have a handful of other visa categories that are present in Illinois State, but for our conversation today, it will primarily be referring to F1 visa holders because that is the majority of our population. At Illinois State, we offer 3 different types of admission. So this will be carried through further in our conversation today, but just a broad overview. We offer academic English, which is our ESL program. That's for students who need a little additional support to get their English up to a university level. We serve students who are coming in with very little to no English, all the way up to those that are just getting a little bit more college ready. We offer pathway programs. So these are for students who are maybe a little behind either in their academic English, or they're coming from an educational system where it is maybe significantly different than the US. And so a pathway will really help them to kind of, we call it a soft landing, to give them the academic background, a little bit of an entry into the university where they may not have otherwise had an opportunity. And then we have direct entry. This is the traditional mode of admission that we think of when we apply to college in the US. So The typical student is probably coming through a direct entry type of admission. But as we talk about things today, these are just helpful terms to keep in mind. Currently, our staffing is that we have 2 full-time admissions evaluators, and those are the application processors. They do everything from answer those email inquiries to evaluating the application and then creating the immigration document on the back end. We'll talk about each of those processes in a lot more detail coming up. But just remember that we have 2 people, and I like to say against the world. So they are really the heart and soul of the operation. And so right now we have a lot more work that they can handle. But we also recently hired an enrollment manager. So that person manages all of the data, making sure that we are making all of the data to be correct and accurate through all of the admissions and enrollment processes. So that's a quick overview of some of the terms that we'll be using today. Next, let's talk about some of the services. What does international admissions do? What does it include? I am going to be breaking these down really into 3 main sections: marketing and recruitment, application processing, and then immigration and pre-arrival. These are kind of the 3 categories, the 3 buckets of work that we primarily work with. So getting into marketing and recruitment. Marketing, where there are lots of different channels, lots of different ways that we try and get Illinois State's name out there to the world. We piggyback a lot with the Office of Admissions, and they do a great job with their materials. And so we use as much of that as possible, but we do speak to a broader audience. And so we want to make sure that we're relating to them in the most appropriate way. So ISU does have a relationship with INTO University Partnerships. So what that means is INTO is a separate entity. We really rely on their network. They have a network of agents around the world that recruit students on behalf of Illinois State. Along with that, they have regional offices in different locales around the world that work directly with the agents in the field that are specialists in Illinois State, in our policies and our programs. And so they are the kind of the first point of contact for those agents. And then if there's questions there, then it comes up to me and to my team. And so INTO's network is great in getting Illinois State's name out there, recruiting applicants for us, and really making sure in that initial counseling stage of international admissions, making sure that Illinois State's the right fit for the student. Do we have the program that they're looking for? Is Bloomington Normal the right choice for them? And that way we have a stronger retention on the back end if in the beginning we are counseling the correct type of student to come to ISU. And then of course we have the kind of traditional modes of engagement for marketing for students. We attend education fairs, obviously right now during COVID. All of those have been moved virtual. We have seen a good engagement with that. It's different than the pre-COVID era of having a table and then just talking to students over and over and over and making sure that they know about Illinois State and what programs we offer. We also do school visits where when we're traveling abroad, we go and visit local high schools or community colleges or colleges to recruit students and really right where they're at to make sure that they are, again, aware of who we are and what we offer. There's great value in university partnerships. When I say university partnerships, I'm talking about maybe a faculty member at ISU has a colleague that they have worked with at an institution abroad. And we really think that there's a deep connection between the work that's being done at the 2 institutions. And so we can set up a formal partnership. We have successful partnerships in the College of Business and the College of the One-Suit College of Arts. And so these partnerships kind of create a channel for Illinois State to encourage students to come here, as well as once those students are here, then they become a voice for us, which really comes down to the word of mouth. This is key. There are markets that we are in that I will say that we haven't really truly invested university dollars in, but it's because of a current student or alumni who've had an excellent experience. They go back home and suddenly we're flooded with applications from a particular university, and we said, we've never had that connection before. And it's really the word of mouth about students having an excellent experience and then going back. So current students and alumni are some of our key recruiters. Finally, the faculty connections, like I was talking about in university partnerships, this can't be undersold. Faculty across the university have diverse backgrounds. They have incredible colleagues around the world. And so as they represent Illinois State, it is a recruitment tool. They can talk to their colleagues about what we offer and about the great university that we are. What are some of our key markets? Right now, our population of students is probably 80% of our international students are graduate students, and 20% are undergrad. And so that means that we are getting a lot of students who have attended university someplace else and are coming here. That is really strong for us. That is, I know that there are then some capacity issues though in those graduate programs. So we are constantly looking for more ways to recruit undergraduate students and to support the graduate students that we do have here. Some of our top countries are Ghana, Nigeria, India, China, and Bangladesh. I will say particularly Ghana and Nigeria, we are seeing year-over-year growth coming from those countries. And again, those are markets that we haven't necessarily invested a ton of money in, but I think the market is growing as the middle class in those regions are growing. But additionally, we've had very happy alumni that go back and tell all of their friends and their family that they should come to ISU. And so that has been a really strong area for us. So something to talk about is application growth. This is a year-over-year, fall and spring. Spring is the blue line. Fall, obviously, numbers tend to be higher for fall start applications. You can see that we are continuing to grow. There was a dip, obviously, in fall of 2020 because we were in the middle of the application cycle, kind of at the key point when COVID hit, and it kind of put a screeching halt to everything. Obviously, there was no international movement at that point, and so no one was applying or thinking about starting really in fall of 20 or spring of 21. But as you can see, we have recovered since then, and our spring 22 numbers are more than double what they were the past year. To keep in mind a little bit here, some of those are deferrals. So we're seeing a lot of students that are still engaged with us, still want to come, but they haven't been able to get here. We'll talk about some of the challenges in that a little bit later, but part of this is that those students then will just defer their application to the next semester and the next semester. So some of these applications that you're seeing in the fall 21 and spring 22 numbers are deferrals. I will say about 30% of that is deferral, but even if 30% of that is deferral, we have a huge amount of new application growth. So students are really engaged, they're ready to come and start that idea of international education, to travel to the US again. That is all very energizing. It's very exciting for us, but it does put a strain on our resources. So you're looking at about 5,000 applications in the fall spring cycle. And again, remember that I have 2 evaluators. So it's really 2 people working with that 5,000 students to make sure that their applications are processed properly and to really be communicating with them and helping them along the way. This is exciting, but we are currently advocating for additional resources to help the growth so that way we can continue to offer great services to our application pool. So down to the nitty gritty, a little bit of our application processing. Right now, we work out of 2 systems. So we have the Into application, which is run out of Salesforce. And then we have the ISU application, which is run out of Slate. Both of them are working at the same time. And the bit of a challenge for us is that one hand can't seem to do what the doesn't know what the other is doing. And so the ISU staff has access into the ISU application and to Slate. And so around campus, graduate coordinators or other folks can look in and say, oh, they have about 1,000 applications. That's wonderful. where the into applications aren't able to be seen. And so that audience can't see that we're also working on about 1,000 applications within the into application system. Those don't carry forward into the university as a whole until they are already admitted and say, yes, I want to come. So those numbers that I just showed you were a total of both of these two systems combined. But it is a challenge for the admissions staff to be balancing both of these systems and to make sure that we're treating all students fairly and that everyone gets the same experience out of whichever way that they apply. After they apply, my staff is working to make sure that they have their completed materials. Do we have all the transcripts and test scores that we need? If they're a graduate student, does that program require a GRE or a GMAT? And so just making sure that that whole portfolio of materials is ready before they're moved on for evaluation and processing. The GPA evaluation is really at the heart of what we do. So this means that we are researching countries and school-specific scales. As you can imagine, someone from India is coming from a different evaluation system and a different GPA base than somebody who's coming from Canada or from Brazil. So they may be coming from a 7-point scale instead of the US traditional 4-point scale. And so we have to go in and research each of these individual schools to see what is an accurate equivalent. And then we actually do the data entry piece of converting the GPA grade by grade, course by course, to make sure that we have the most accurate picture of what their US GPA equivalent would be. And then we pass that GPA on to admissions and to the graduate coordinators as they review the full application to make their decisions. But really the GPA evaluation is the main bulk of the time that my staff spends. Our goal is really to each person evaluate 10 to 15 applications a day because there is so much research that has to go into this. And so if you can imagine, we had 5,000 applications with a minimum of 10 a day. It takes a long time to get through all of them. And so we're advocating for additional staff and additional resources so that we can have a quicker turnaround and a better student experience. And then after the student is admitted or not, we do send out those admission decision letters through the different application systems. So we do have some tools that help there, but that processes of releasing those decisions is something that my staff does as well. So after they're admitted, an international student needs to be issued immigration documentation to come. In order to issue that, we have to have two things. They have to be first admitted, and then second is that they have to submit proof of financial support. This is a visa regulation for the F1 visa holders, and they have to prove that they have enough money for tuition, fees, and living expenses for 1 full year. And so we have a form that the students fill out. In addition, they have to submit a bank statement or scholarship letter, some combination of documents to prove that they actually have that amount in available funds. So my staff looks over those financial documents, make sure that they all check out. If they're ever in question, we actually will contact the bank directly and say that we've received this document. Can you verify its authenticity? And we've built some great connections there. And then once everything is reviewed and approved, we issue the I-20 for those F1 students. For J1 students, which is our other population, they get a DS-2019. It's a similar immigration document, but for a different visa category. Our intent to enroll form would be the next step for a student. And so what this is it is a form saying, yes, I plan on enrolling at Illinois State University. If everything goes well, I get my visa, I'm going to be there. It's a chance for the students to tell us if they have any travel plans arranged or if they have a visa appointment upcoming, things like that. That is their way to communicate that information to us. It also kicks off the pre-arrival communication. I work with some colleagues in the International Student Services, and in iHouse, and they really handle the pre-arrival communication, but we work together to make sure that we're talking to the right group of students to make sure that everyone has the information that they need. And then we provide assistance at orientation, whatever, it's all hands on deck at orientation. So we're happy to help in any way there, but that is a key point for us to collect the official documentation. What I mean by that is that in the application and admission process, we work with copies. So if a student scans us a version of their transcript, we consider that a copy. And then at orientation, we do require the official sealed document from the institution. A lot of institutions now are issuing them electronically. So a good option there is if they haven't sent it electronically, we can provide instructions to the student on how to do that, or to provide the hard copies to us. Some of the challenges, obviously COVID. This has been world-changing for everyone, and it really put a halt to international applications and international travel for a solid year and a half, really. We are just now starting to see movement. We got a trickle of students coming in last year, spring this year. We had about 50 new students on campus, which we were excited about. But what we're primarily seeing with this is deferrals. So students aren't able to get their visa or aren't able to come. Life circumstances have changed and they had to put their education on hold. So they've said, can you just defer my application to the next semester? And so a good bulk of what we are doing for those students is deferring from one semester to the next. We will waive the application fee for one term. So if they're deferring from fall to spring, we've said, we already have all of your materials, we will just waive your application fee for that next term. We've also noticed that there is a financial ability challenge for a lot of students. This means that maybe their family was in a financial position to help them pre-COVID, but due to maybe businesses closing down or needing to use up savings, they are no longer in a financial place where they can show that one full year of funding. And so it's really trying to work with what scholarships are available, really trying to work with students because they don't fill out any form of FAFSA. And so if you're coming from this, looking at it from a US standpoint, all US students fill out FAFSA, international students don't. And so how can we determine the students who have a financial need and how can we assist them? And this is for new students as well as continuing students. So those continuing students, they are also seeing a financial crunch. And so this is an ongoing challenge for our students. And then probably the one that we have heard about the most is visa availability. Around the world, embassies closed down for a long period of time and opened up at different periods based upon COVID in that local region. And so there has been a backlog of students who wanted to come for fall 20, for spring 21, and so forth, but they've just not been able to get an appointment to go and see a visa officer to get that F1 visa. They may have all of their paperwork in order, they're absolutely ready to come, they're excited to be here, but they just can't get an appointment. And so we have students who are refreshing and logging into the State Department at midnight, at 2 o'clock in the morning, just to see if there's any new visa appointments available. And we encourage students to just keep checking back. This is something that is completely outside of our control. We do monitor and try and keep an eye on what embassies and consulates have availability, what is their estimated timeline, and just to really help students. We are hopeful that this will clear up relatively soon now that more of the world is opening back up and embassies really should be functioning at a higher level at this point. So it's looking good for fall of 22 that visa availability will be somewhat back to normal. And then just some non-COVID challenges. Again, I mentioned staffing. It's a great problem that we have a ton of applications, but due to just staffing constraints, it is taking us longer than what we would like, than what is ideal to process applications. Thankfully, as a university, we're a team. So I have to absolutely thank the graduate school for their evaluators and coming in and helping us out. For the undergraduate office, it's just been a great team effort. But as we move forward, we want to make sure that we're adequately serving our international applicants, that we are getting them timely responses, that we're able to really assist them in the best way possible through staff within the International Admissions Office. Funding changes. The graduate assistantship process changed on campus, and those are always very competitive, but now I feel that it's even more so. And so our students are constantly looking for funding opportunities because it is expensive to come and study in the United States. And so as funding models change across campus, that does impact international students and their ability to come here. And then I will just say that the global market demand for some programs is changing. So we are seeing that particularly any ESL program, students are finding out that they can study this online or in their home country for a more affordable rate. And so then we're trying to encourage them that, you know, an on-campus experience is more immersive and that it is culturally enriching. But global market demand for programs like that is going down. And so we want to make sure that students are aware of all of the services that we offer and that we are really encouraging them to continue to consider some of these programs and that we need to be adaptable as a university, as a US market, to what do the students want? What are they looking for? And how can we meet those needs? So being willing to be flexible in some of our offerings is really important. So what's the post-COVID outlook? And I will say that this is, as we all learned, this is a bit of a guessing game. Are we in post-COVID? When is that, when does that start? I think it's everyone's best guess. But some things that we are kind of seeing on the horizon is, again, a change in the demand for ESL programs, particularly coming out of China and India, which were some of the main markets for this before. During COVID, they have found ways to offer these in country, or there are now plenty of online options for ESL. And so decisions need to be made of, do we want to adapt our program to fit more in that model? Or do we want to continue with our current offerings and just encourage students that this is a better option? I think that there's room for flexibility in that and seeking a new direction, but I think that probably change is going to be seen there. There's more virtual recruitment opportunities. As mentioned, COVID changed the recruitment strategies of a lot of places, and maybe you don't need to be spending $20,000 to do a 3-week trip to a particular region. That there are more opportunities to do Zoom webinars and opportunities to do a lot more of the armchair recruitment. A lot of these big recruitment fairs now have Zoom opportunities. So those are less expensive and we're seeing some good engagement there. So this is an opportunity for us, and I think for all schools to continue to look into. As mentioned, we have an increase in applications and we are expecting fewer and fewer deferrals. Now that visas are opening up, we are hoping that there are fewer deferrals, that those deferrals will actually convert into enrollments, and that we have a higher yield off of those. But even with the deferral, we are seeing an increase in applications. Students who have maybe held on to their plans to study in the United States for a couple of years, they're now applying in full force. So the outlook, I would say, for international education across the board in the US is positive. I think that the regions that students are coming from is in flux, whereas 5 years ago, we had a very heavy Chinese population in the United States. I think that will wane and other markets will grow. But the demand for programs within the US still remains very strong. And then, as mentioned, I see that visa availability is going to more normalize, really kind of even out over the next, hopefully, few months, and looking into fall of 22. it looks like things, as long as we're on the same trajectory, should stay in a positive way. And then that concludes my presentation. I will stop sharing and give folks a chance to ask some questions.
All right, Kayla, we have one question that was submitted. Actually, we have two, but I'll read you the first one. And that is, how many international students are currently enrolled at ISU, and how many of those are directly enrolled versus through Into?
Sure. So currently we have about 550 international students enrolled. And the question of how many of them come through Into or not is tricky, because Into recruits for direct entry as well as pathway. So I think maybe what you're asking is how many of them are pathway. Our current pathway enrollment is about 35 in our AE and pathway program. That was hit pretty hard with COVID because they're only in a pathway for a maximum of a year. So students who began COVID in a pathway have now progressed and transitioned full-time into the university. And we just haven't seen as many new students be able to start those programs. But overall, our enrollment is about 550 international students.
Okay, and do you know off the top of your head what the highest enrollment was of international students that we've had?
So we were trending upward pre-pandemic, and I think this is a hard one to quote off the top of my head. I think in the beginning of 2019, 2020, we were close to 800. Yeah.
All right, very good. The next question is, if resources were no longer an issue, so if we had all the money in the world, where would you like to see international admissions and enrollment go in the future?
That's a fantastic question. I love when there's no money constraints, don't we all? I would like to see that we have the staffing capacity to address student questions in a timely manner. We have an office manager who is fantastic, but that is her only job, really, is to manage our inbox and our inquiries, because that is a full-time job. But some additional evaluators, so that way that students are hearing back from us. Some research has said that the sooner you get back to a student, the sooner they have an admission from your institution, the more likely that they are to enroll there. And that is debatable, but even so, it is disheartening to see a student have to wait 2 months or more to get an admission decision. We don't want to lose their interest. We want to stay on top of that. But just with current staffing, it's not really possible. So we have to process applications in the order in which they're received. And if we have more hands, the lighter that work would be. So as far as the actual processing, I think that if money weren't an issue, I would have several more processors to be able to stay on top of that. And marketing and recruitment, I do see that, as I mentioned, though, there are virtual opportunities, but travel is going to start opening back up again. And so going to some of those places where we have a good word of mouth, but actually putting boots on the ground as an institution and kind of showing ourselves in those areas, I think would be helpful.
Very good. Then we have a question asking, how is the interest of international studies to compare to, let me start this over again. Okay. Tell us about the interest of international students to study in the US compared to other English speaking countries. So the UK, Canada, and Australia, is it, neck and neck, or how much competition do you see between those destinations?
Yeah, I will say that the interest is different depending upon where the students are coming from. So pre-pandemic, I will say the 2016 to 2019 time was really the first time that the US saw a dip in international growth. Administration at the time was not as open and friendly to outside US students. And so we did see a decrease at that time, and they're still going somewhere. So I would say that Canada actually received a lot of growth that year. And then Australia also sees some. We don't see as much going to the UK. It's not as competitive compared to the US. The US still does receive the most international students coming in, but that is because we have 5,000 international institutions that students are attending. And so it's a broader pool to bring students in. So it's hard to compare numbers wise, but interest wise, I would say that Canada is probably the biggest competitor as far as if students are going to be studying abroad, where are they going? Yeah, good.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
Nope,
Okay,
that's fine.
very good. Then we have a question. What courses or programs do most graduate students apply to? Is it mostly STEM or non-STEM? And are there plans to expand the STEM options here at ISU?
Yeah, great question. The main grad programs specifically that we're seeing students go to are computer science, information systems, and MBA. Some technology, but really those are the leading programs as far as application. And I know there's some capacity issues even within some of those. So obviously computer science and information systems are STEM designated, which is very attractive to students. We do see a lot of students trying to go for that because they have a 3-year OPT opportunity after graduation. So that's very attractive to students. And as far as new STEM offerings, the institution, it's not a secret, they are working on creating a College of Engineering that is in the works, and that is a part of the long-term plan here. We are excited for that because it will draw a lot of international students, and that would be a great opportunity for us.
And for those who aren't familiar, can you tell us briefly what OPT is?
Sure. So international students have limited opportunities for employment while they're a current student. So they're allowed to work on campus for up to 20 hours a week during the semester. Breaks can be more than that. But then after their first year, they have an opportunity for what's called CPT, which is what students, what most people would think of as internships. So they can work off campus at an internship, something that's related to their degree, something that they may be earning credit for. There's an academic component to that. After graduation, there's an opportunity for students to apply for a work authorization to stay in the US for 1 year or extend it out to 3 years. That's called OPT. And so that's when they are getting a job in their field of study and really getting real life experience of what they just studied. And so that's OPT, and STEM fields are the only programs and the only degrees that offer that 3-year opportunity. Otherwise, non-STEM designated fields are only a 1-year opportunity for students. And so that's why the STEM designation is very attractive to students, because then they can stay in the US a little bit longer and gain more experience.
Excellent. This next question probably applies to something you addressed earlier, and that is, you talked about enrollments growing and declining from different countries. Would you address briefly the reasons that those enrollments ebb and flow between different countries?
It's cultural, it's geopolitical, it is maybe economics within that region. So again, I mentioned briefly in my presentation earlier where China used to be the #1 sender of students to the US to study. But in the past 5 years, we've seen that decline. So institutions that were heavily Chinese international enrollment have really seen that change, whether that has to do with the political climate between the US and China. There's a growth within China of educating their own students. They want to keep them within country, so that way they are getting a Chinese education. And so there's a lot of factors that are going into it. And then obviously COVID changed a lot for different regions. China particularly is not quite out of COVID in the same way that maybe other areas are opening up. And so there are different reasons for ebbs and flows in enrollments and interest even in studying in the US based upon just a number of factors.
All right, thank you. This question is about the application fee, and it says, The question is often asked, can the $50 application fee be removed for international applicants? This person says, I know the answer is no, but is there any way that could change?
I think that there is discussion to be had about changing that. But you're right. For now, our policy is that we don't waive it because what the main reason that students ask for it to be waived is because they can't afford the $50. The reasoning behind saying no to that is because if you can't afford the $50 and we're saying we need to waive that $50 in a month when we're admitted and you need to show me your bank statements saying that you have $40,000 to be able to afford your full studies here, there's an incongruity there. And so we can't say that you can't afford $50, but then turn around and say, yes, you can afford $35,000 or $40,000. And so really just to be fair across the board, we have just said no fee waivers. If the university as a whole wants to look at that policy and potentially change that, I'm open to those discussions, but I would want that to be applied fairly across all students. And because they don't fill out any type of FAFSA or any type of other documentation that proves a financial need, it's difficult to verify who should qualify for a waiver and who shouldn't. That's why it gets a little messy.
And do you happen to know if that $50 application fee is in line with what students would pay to apply at other universities?
It's pretty comparable. So that's the application fee for the university. That there's no special international application fee. That's just a university-wide fee.
Very good. All right. And this is getting onto the marketing aspect. In your opinion, what would be the most successful marketing strategy to get more international students to come to ISU?
Yeah, that's great. I don't know that there's a simple answer for that. I think that using the resources that we have as far as current students and incentivizing faculty would be great. The strategy would need to be multi-pronged because every area of the world is looking for different things. In some areas, when you go to recruit there, it's very much about rankings. They want to know, I have a number 4 program in the world in actuarial science versus other countries. They want to know they may be very price sensitive. They want to know that Bloomington Normal is an incredibly affordable place to live and it's a safe environment. And so when you're marketing around the world, you need to emphasize different things. So while creating materials that touch on all of those is important, talking to the people on the ground wherever you may be trying to recruit students, it's important to know what they value and then find those connections. So again, the current student or the alumni who can speak to that real ISU experience. One of the things that the main office of undergraduate admissions talks about often is once we get a student on campus, they fall in love. Our campus tour, our campus experience, that visit day is so critical to a lot of that decision to attend Illinois State. International students don't have that opportunity. Most of their first time ever coming here is to arrive at orientation. They don't get a visit experience. And so I know that we have worked on creating a better virtual visit opportunity, really to host as many webinars as possible. So beyond just getting the name out there, then really start to have that people opportunity and that people interaction with as many students or potential students as possible, because that's what sells ISU. I think that we all love it because of the people and because of the environment. And so really trying to make those connections as often as possible.
Very good. We have 2 questions that relate to visas. One of them is related to dependents. So we know that some graduate students in particular come with family members. So we have a question, can an F1 dependent enroll at ISU with an F2 visa? Oh.
Okay. So the answer to that is that F2 visas can study. but there are specific rules of each visa type. And so you would want to work with the ISSS office here to make sure that the visa category, or if it's a dependent, that it is suitable for a degree seeking opportunity. We have students who attend primarily our academic English as an F2 because it's not degree seeking. And so we want to make sure that the visa category closely aligns and allow.
All right, the next visa question, I don't know if you can address or not, but can a J visa student apply for OPT? You already addressed what OPT is, and if you want to just cover briefly what a J visa is, because I know some of our audience may not know.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So OPT is specific to F1. So OPT is, it is only related to that F1 visa. J1 as a visa category, you can be a full-time student. You can be an exchange student. There are multiple categories for visiting faculty members or scholars, researchers, interns. J has a lot of very specific categories within it. F is just kind of a generalized version, which is why most of our students attend on that. But as a J1 student, there is an opportunity post completing your academic piece to do, it's called academic training, or AT, that is similar to OPT. It has some different rules and kind of how you go about that. But there is an opportunity for some real life experience with a J visa.
Very good. And the next question is ISU open to partnering with other student recruiting agencies? And I'm guessing other means in addition to Into.
At this time, our contract with Into is exclusive. So any third-party partner that wants to come in, any agent, they would need to subcontract with Into. And so the agents that work with Into are paid a commission, and all of that is handled through Into as an organization. But at this time, our contract with Into is exclusive.
Okay, the next question is, we know that diversity, equity, and inclusion are important to the university. It's part of the strategic mission. So how does that fit into your work in international admissions and recruitment?
That's a fantastic question. I think that international is diversity, and so it really brings diverse perspectives from outside of the U.S. into the classroom. I like to say that I never know where a student is coming from and what culture they're going to bring. But for a domestic student who may not be able to afford study abroad or may not be able to get an outside perspective, maybe they've never left Illinois, bringing an international student into the classroom enriches everyone's experience. It brings that diverse voice and perspectives from maybe areas that wouldn't have otherwise been represented in a classroom or in a student organization. And so international admissions really does bring another side of diversity. We try very, very hard to be equitable across all students and try and hold everyone to the same standards and making sure that everyone has the opportunities that they are seeking. So I think that the work that we do really is a part of diversity, equity, and inclusion that is often not as highlighted, I'll say, within the work that DEI does, but it is essential.
All right, thank you. And particularly in terms of students who might be lower income, I know you mentioned the application needing to show resources for covering the first year. Is there any way that studying here can be accessible to people who are lower income as international students?
Yeah, that is, I will say that there are scholarships out there. ISU doesn't have a ton of resources from an admissions standpoint available. And we're looking at students on a merit-based level, primarily a GPA, rather than need-based. Again, because there's no worldwide way to assess that. And so we do offer scholarships. I will say that at the graduate level, the graduate assistantship makes it affordable for students who wouldn't have otherwise been able to study here. We have a very competitive graduate assistant award package. And then we're always encouraging students to look outside and see what other opportunities are there. Unfortunately, though, just as a federal regulation, it is expensive to come and study in the US. ISU has a competitive tuition rate compared to other institutions. And so in that way, we are able to attract students who may not be able to afford, to go to a big city or other more expensive institutions. And we try and help the best we can, but really the onus unfortunately falls to the student to have to do a lot of that legwork and research for outside scholarships.
All right, thank you. It looks like we've addressed all of the questions that have been submitted. Are there any last thoughts that you'd like to share or any additional pointers you want to give?
I appreciate the opportunity to highlight international admissions. I want to thank anybody who's on the call who partners with us and supports the students once we get here. We know that we are just the very first step in a student's experience at Illinois State. Our goal is to kind of get them here and trust that we can hand them off to our colleagues who are going to take great care of them and their student experience. And then we will circle back around when they're alumni to be our advocates. And so we can't do it all. And so we rely heavily on all of our partners across campus. And so I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone. International education is a team effort, and we just happen to be on the front end of it.
Well, thank you so much, Kayla. This has been so informative, and obviously your experience and expertise really shines through. And this actually leads right into next week's session, which will be the same time next week. Dr. Wouter van Allebeek will be sharing the international student perspective, and he will give an overview of student services and then lead a student panel. So thank you so much, Kayla, for your presentation. For everyone listening, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And if you haven't done so, please sign up for next week's program at International Seminar. I have to look this up. Sorry, IllinoisState.edu/SeminarSeries. Or if you have questions, you can email it to internationalseminar@illstu.edu. Thank you so much. And that concludes today's program.